the conversation around Jalen Hurts, it's getting wild. So we're going to ask somebody who played in the NFL for a decade. Nick Ferguson, the Broncos, the Texans. We've had him on the show before here talking about the Broncos, but he put out a very interesting video talking about the video of Jalen Hurts throwing the interception at practice has gotten everyone losing their minds. And Nick Ferguson joins us right now here on 97.3 ESPN. Nick, welcome back. We know you're back. That means football season's here. How's it going?
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad to see football is back, and hopefully the Philly fans are as excited as I am. I mean, football is back.
Exactly. And I loved your video you posted last night, so I had to reach out to you because we were just having this conversation yesterday about, you have a guy in Jalen Hurts. This guy has all of the check marks on the resume, but yet one video goes online of him throwing an interception in practice, and the whole world acts like the guy's a bum.
You know what? That's the frustrating part about it, is because not every quarterback is treated as fairly as some others. And for some reason, there's just this overly amount of disdain for Jalen Hurts and his ability. But I try to remind people, okay, well, he's been to the Super Bowl twice. And then the first time he played against the Iron Man and Superman and Patrick Mahomes, he outdueled him. Had the Eagles won that game, Jalen Hurts is the MVP of the Super Bowl. But they come back and they repeat it, he wins. But there's just a lot of this negative vitriol for this guy. And watching the video, I'm trying to explain it to people like, this is practice. This is not a game. This is practice. And I think Allen Iverson famously said it. And it is absolutely true. But this is where you want to make your mistakes, in practice. But on that particular play, from my standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, Quinyon Mitchell made a great play. Like, Hollywood Brown needed to bring that dig route in just a little more because Jalen Hurts was throwing to a spot. He wasn't throwing to a man. And maybe that has a lot to do with their lack of chemistry at this point. But I think Jalen Hurts, man, he's been unfairly judged. And we're talking about by fans, some Philly fans, some out-of-market fans. But here's where it's so much disheartening for me. Seeing former players who played the game just as well as I played it, they're criticizing him as too. And they're saying, well, the Eagles social media team did a poor job because they highlighted something negative about the quarterback. No, they're not. There's two sides of the ball. They just highlighted the fact that the defense actually made a play. And I'm like, why can you not do that? Right? And once again, and I posted it in my video at Nick Ferguson _25. I talked about Josh Allen. He started off their practice with 4 INTs. No, there was no video, but it happened. But no one is saying anything negative about Josh Allen, but the criticism is overwhelming when it comes to Jalen Hurts, and I just don't get it.
So from your experience, you look around the NFL, right? Hurts has done things that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, you throw in whatever quarterback you want to. These guys haven't done it. So what do you think it is about Jalen that gets people so off their rocker? Because, Nick, you've probably seen the same things I have on different shows, different platforms, where these people, it's like Jalen Hurts could cure the world of cancer, and they still complain about it.
Yeah, they are, because I'll boil it down to something really simple as it's just hate. Even Cam Newton, who's been to the Super Bowl himself, he has criticized Jalen Hurts as well. And I think it's a little hatred that Jalen Hurts' numbers may be a little better than his as far as rushing touchdowns, as far as getting to Super Bowls, actually winning a Super Bowl. So there's a lot of negativity dispute in the direction of Jalen Hurts because everyone wanted him to fail. Because when you go from Alabama, you're replaced by Tua Tagovailoa, and then you have to go to Oklahoma and then really prove yourself. Everyone was thinking, okay, well, he's not a top quarterback. All he has done since he's been in the league is lead that team. And I'll say this, I don't subscribe to this idea that the teams win Super Bowls solely based on their quarterback. No, this is a team sport. It's not freaking golf. Everyone is required to do their part. The addition of Saquon Barkley absolutely helps him, just like any quarterback. If you have a great run game, like Josh Allen has James Cook, right? No one's complaining about that. but they go hand in hand. And oh, by the way, the defense as well. But there's a lot of haters of Jalen Hurts that started when he was in college. Now they're on the transition to him being in the pros, but he's a hell of a quarterback in my book.
Talking with Nick Ferguson, 10-year NFL safety with the Broncos and the Texans, among others, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN, as he mentioned, at Nick Ferguson _25 on the X platform. Nick, when you talk about what Jalen Hurts has done, I'm glad you mentioned the college part, because, you know, one of the things that we've had a conversation this offseason about, I want to get your perspective as a player, right? You know, I never played in the NFL, okay? So, you know, I don't know. But in my perspective, I thought one of the biggest highlights of the offseason was when Jalen Hurts was at Oklahoma, he was a runner-up for the Heisman. Lincoln Riley, who was his coach there, spent the month of May with Hurts, with Sean Mannion, helping with the transition of the installation of this new offense. As a player, is that a big deal to have that level of collaboration in the offseason?
It is so vital and so important. And keep this in mind, when we look at Jalen Hurts and his time with the Eagles, he's had 6 offensive coordinators. Sean Mannion is taking over for Patullo, who I thought didn't do a great job. He didn't really say the offensive or Jalen Hurts, but that's besides the point. But it is so important that the offensive coordinator and the quarterback are on the same page. But there's a guy that never really gets talked about that is just as important as the OC. That's the quarterback coach, because that guy works lockstep with that quarterback every single day. That quarterback coach is in the room with the quarterback. So it pays to be on the same page, but also, too, as an OC to say, hey, listen, I don't care about the fact of how many places I've run this particular system. It's about the quarterback. What does the quarterback need from me to help him out? Even if that means that you have to change some of the play calls. And we've seen, play calls, because Sean Payton when he gives a call, it is long as hell. So the idea is that if you have to reduce the play call to allow your quarterback to be able to get it out and disseminate it to everyone else in the huddle so they can execute it, to me, that's what you want to do. So it's all about doing what you need to do. If you're saying, well, we're sold on this particular guy, and it seems like the Eagles are sold on Jalen Hurts, you do everything within your power to make sure that you highlight him. And I know most people are saying, well, his numbers are not going to be that great because A.J. Brown is no longer in the building. I like to think that Jalen Hurts is going to take this as a challenge, because he's heard so many people talk about him since his college days, what he cannot do, that he's willing to prove what he can do.
And I think one of the things, I'm glad you put it that way, what he can do, because this is a guy who did win the Super Bowl MVP. He was the runner-up for the NFL MVP a couple of years ago. And and I know Jalen Hurts, he's a very monotone guy. He vocally doesn't get excited, but he has said this offseason, Nick, he is excited about this offense, that he is in Sean Mannion's hip pocket trying to get better. It sounds like to me that we got a motivated guy. And, I had this conversation with Hollis Thomas a couple of weeks ago, the former Eagle, Nick. Hollis talked about the fact that when a man looks as focused as Jalen is, you can't underestimate him.
No, you can't. And once again, that's the great thing about playing this sport. There are going to be people who are going to be on your side, and there are going to be a large amount of people who are going to be totally against you. At the end of the day, you have to think about what you're capable of doing and how you have gotten to the point where you are being a professional athlete, and allow those negative words, those negative sayings, the clippings, people talking about you on the radio or television, allow that to be somewhat of a motivator to kind of get you going. And I know the idea is that you shouldn't listen to the naysayers, and no one should be able to get you going. But I tell you what, the greatest part of success is making people choke on their words. And Jalen Hurts has done a phenomenal job of doing just that. And it just troubles me to see how many people are so against him. And they don't look at other quarterbacks the same way they judge him, because once again, you get a viral video about practice. We're not talking about a game, we're talking about practice. And that's where you want to make your mistakes. So when you get in the game, the chemistry is better between you and your skill players.
Couple more for Nick Ferguson, of course, 10-year NFL safety, now covering the Broncos for Broncos Radio, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. During the time Vic Fangio was in Denver, it didn't work out for him as a head coach, But Nick, he has been absolutely phenomenal as a DC here in Philadelphia. And there's a lot of people who are talking about how good this Eagles defense can be. We know that Fangio has said that, Hurts looked great in practice, but the defense is trying to throw everything in the kitchen sink at him. What is your perspective of Philadelphia heading into this season? Last year was a disappointment. Can they do it again, make a deep playoff run this year?
Yeah, I think they can, because once again, you have, Saquon Barkley, running the ball. You have Jalen Hurts. You have Devontae Smith. And then you talk about Vic Fangio and the defense. And one thing that happens in this league a lot, quarterbacks are propped up on this pedestal. And everyone talks about the quarterback, but all the supporting cast, the ensemble, they don't get a lot of credit, because you have to be able to run the ball. You have to be able to stop the run. You have to be able to create turnovers, and you have to be able to flip those turnovers into points. That makes you a dangerous team. And Philly, known as though they got a taste of what that feels like, not once, but twice. So I would like to think that they definitely want to get back to it. Yeah, you have some departures on the defensive side of the ball, but you have Davis, you have Carter. I mean, you got two guys up front that can really be problematic and be disruptive for opposing offenses. So those guys can get back to where they were a couple of years ago, when that defense was just, dominating, killing so many people. Now that means extra possessions for your offense. So yes, I truly believe, and once again, I'm saying this, and I'm not a Philly fan. I didn't play for the Eagles, but I'm saying this being a person who watches football and loves football, that the Eagles team, they have the capabilities of surprising a lot of people. And yes, last year, you said it. Last year wasn't a great year for them statistically, not how they wanted. So now they have a new offensive coordinator. Jalen Hurts is going to be really inspired, because when you look at some of the rankings, and even though the ESPN rankings, when you talk about executives, ranking the quarterbacks, he wasn't that high. I think they had him at 5. He's so much better than that, because a lot of those guys on that list, Josh Allen being number 1, when was the last time Josh Allen was in the Super Bowl? I'll wait for it. He hasn't. He hasn't been in the Super Bowl. So Jalen Hurts has what it takes to put Philadelphia Eagles where they need to be. And I truly believe that he can do that.
Nick, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Broncos, because I think the biggest question coming into this year in a stacked AFC West is Bo Nix. I would argue that if Bo Nix was healthy in that championship game, the Broncos would have been in the Super Bowl instead of the Patriots. So what are realistic expectations for the return of Bo Nix for Denver this year?
The idea is that running back. I know that's not a word that Sean Payton wants to use around here, but that's exactly what you did. You made a couple of tweaks to the roster here, adding some young upstarts, and you bring back J.K. Dobbins. But yeah, that's the theory around here, that if Bo Nix didn't hurt his ankle against Buffalo, yeah, it's Sam Darnold and Bo Nix in the Super Bowl. And that's the mindset that you definitely have to have. And I'll tell you this, the defense for the past 2 seasons has led the NFL in sacks, and they're thirsty for more. Like last year, they had 63. They're hoping to break the single-season sack record. So if they do that, once again, defense, giving way to the offense, more possessions for Bo Nix, and the Broncos could be in the Super Bowl.
Wouldn't it be cool if it was a Broncos-Eagles Super Bowl?
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
I mean, there might not be no points scored in that game, though. That's the only problem.
Right. Oh, yes. Football gods, if you're listening, can we make that happen? Can we make that happen?
Remember when the Patriots and Rams played years ago, and there was just like no points for like the first 3 quarters?
Wasn't that game was like, what, 13-3 or something like that?
So like 13-3, 14-3. Edelman only won MVP because he had the only score of the game.
Yes. See, look, really quickly, unlike most people who love to see a lot of points, right? They want to see the offense run up points. No, a great game for me is a score that's like a baseball score, like 9-3. Yeah. I love those types of games.
Absolutely. Now, of course, listen, we're a little biased. I played safety when I was in high school. So for me, it's like, I want to see a good defensive hit. I want to see some good defensive action. So I'm with you there, Nick. All right.
Well, there it is. But once again, football gods, if you're listening, I got my fingers crossed. I'm knocking on wood. Can we get the Denver Broncos and the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl.
He is Nick Ferguson. Of course, you can check him out on the X platform, Nick Ferguson _25 for all of his NFL coverage, 10-year NFL safety. And he joined us right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Nick, great stuff today.
All right, man. Enjoy the games.